Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah, so in the early 1920s, my gran and granddad rented this front half of the old hall, and a farmer called Mr. Amer and his family rented the back half. My gran and granddad got very excited about the fact that they're going to live in this big building, this grandeur, you know, all around them. And so they went to tell families, and the family said, oh, that's great, you know. So they moved in here, and they'd only not been here very long, and they went back to the families and they said, do you know, it's a bit odd, but there's a room shut off upstairs. You know, we can't get in at all, the room at the front, the bedroom. And nobody said much to them until my granddad spoke to his grandma, and my grandma spoke to her grandma. So the grandparents, like the farthest away grandparents, would have been somewhere around the early 1800s. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That sort of, from that sort of age. And they told, almost word for word, the same story to both my granddad and my grandma. And that was that, don't know when it was, they didn't say when it was, but there was the maid, and she put the children to bed in that front bedroom, right at the top. The bed was one of the sort that have got the bed curtains round, it was that sort of age. The maid took them in and made sure they were alright, shut the bed curtains, went back into the little room at behind, where in the left hand corner there was a fireplace. There was a little fireplace. But she sat down, and the long skirts were draped around her. A piece of coal fell out, she started dozing off. A piece of coal fell out of the fire and set fire to her skirts. In a panic, she started screaming and shouting for help. And then all she could think of, apparently, this is what has been relayed to my grandma and my granddad, she wanted to get into the children, get the children out. Because the little rug that was in front of the fire that the chair was on, that was on fire as well. So she ran in to get the kids out. Now, looking back on it in these days, it would be easy to see how it happened, because they hadn't got any of the specially treated fabrics to stop fire. Everything was very flammable. So my gran said she ran in there, this is what her grandma told her, she ran in, opened the bed curtains to tell the kids to get out. As she did that, the skirts caught the bed curtains went up, the bed went up as well. The bed was up, you know, like a horsehair sort of mattress type, that went up. The parents came running because they'd heard the screaming and the shouting. They saw the maid desperately trying to get the kids out, but then it was all too late, and everything went up the boom, and nobody could get to them. The parents were so distraught they didn't want anybody to ever use that room again. And so the door on the landing, above that one there, they bricked it up. And the panelling was put across to hide it, hide the brick. The door in the little room that went in to the main bed, to the kids' bedroom, that door stayed, but it was covered with panelling. So it was all panelled off, so nobody could ever get in that room again. And that's how I saw it when I came up here when I was 13. All the panelling was across the wall, and the other door was shut off. And this is how I knew the story, because I went from here and I took it to my gran's and I said, I've been seeing the old hall. I said, right away up the stairs. I said, and you get this room at the top and you can't get in. There's no door. You know, it's all panelled on the landing and there's no way in at the other. How do you get in there? And she said, well, that one at the top. And I said, yes, you don't. It's all shut off. And this is when she told me the story of why the room had been shut off and what had happened. But there's various versions of it online. Some say it was just the maid. Some say that the maid burnt to death, that she was in her room in the cot loft, and that she caught fire up there, and the kids were with her. But all the versions say that the room was blocked off and bricked up. Well, of course, the cock lofts have always been open, so that debunks that theory. I mean, this is coming from the early 1800s, which I think is nearer to possibly the truth of it, the early 1800s, than what could be surmised now. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that anybody's wrong, I'm not saying that mediums are wrong or that anybody else is wrong in what they're thinking, but I think that the early 1800s is nearer to when it would have. And of course they didn't have social media and everything back then, so it wasn't a case of, you put something online and by the time you get to the end of the day the story's changed completely, And
I think you also said that you'd been up there when the room was blocked off though, didn't you?
yeah, that's
So
right, yeah,
when you weren't playing truant from school.
That's right, yeah. Like I say, this is when I was just saying, when a friend, because a friend at school friend of mine, her parents were the then caretakers, and I'd been telling her about my gran and granddad and my mum and my aunt living here, and she said, well, I'll take you up there. And I'm not saying I played truant at all, I'm a Roxanne citizen. But we came when her mum and dad were out, and she got the keys and she took me all the way up. And this is what I was saying, that I couldn't understand. I went to my gran and said, why is there no door? Why can't you get in that room? It was just, you couldn't believe it. One other thing is that the loft bedrooms, when my mum was little, she got scarlet fever. And back then, all you could do was isolate the kid. I mean, you didn't take them to hospital or anything like that. Back in the 1920s, you just, give them chicken soup and plenty to drink and hope for the best, My mum had to be isolated, and she was put up into the loft bedrooms for 6 weeks. And the only one that could go up there to her was my gran. And she'd got an old, thick cotton sheet, and she cut it into strips. And so she could tie the piece around her face and neck, to go up there. And at the bottom of the stairs, she put a little table at the bottom of the stairs on the landing with a bowl of water and some soap so she could wash her hands as soon as she came down. And these pieces of cotton would be chucked into the copper boiler and boiled, to get rid of any germs. But my mum, she was apparently a live wire, same as my aunt, before she went up there. And she had the 6 weeks up there. My granddad and my aunt would stand at the bottom of the stairs and call to her, obviously, but they couldn't go up. And perhaps through the day it wasn't too bad, she said, but at night she was terrified. Up there on her own every night. She was only little, but she could remember it. And she said very often she felt like there was something really bad. She was really frightened. And she used to pull the sheet and the blankets over her, But then after a minute or two, this whatever was bad had gone, and it was something that was nice. And she said she felt safe, and as if my gran was there with her or something. And I said to her one day when she was telling me this, because I very often talked about things like here and the past, and like when her and my dad got together and all the rest of it. And I said, well, might be that maid. Might be the maid that was coming looking after you. Getting rid of anything bad out of the room, coming looking after you. And she says, yes, I've sometimes thought that.
But that's terrifying as a child.
But just before we go, one funny little bit of haunting. That field out there, it's now the football field, that used to have a big hedge all the way around it. And in that field was Mr. Raymer's bull called Billy. And anybody walking up here at night, Billy, in the dark, Billy used to wonder what it was. And he'd go snuffling in the hedge bottom, looking, see, if you could see, snorting and stuff. And people used to start running, thinking it was something in the hedge was going to get them ghosts.
Thank you.
But this big, let me just, one more.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right.
This big fireplace that was here, this big stone fireplace, open fireplace, almost like an ingle knock, was connected to the one downstairs, which was my mum, my gran and my granddad's living room on the first floor. My mum and my aunt used to have school friends round for tea now and again, and they'd have the tea. They'd get on the pegged rug in front of the fire and start playing. My granddad, having had his tea, would come up here and creep across this floor, put his head in that fireplace and make ghost noises. So if you, the little kids down there used to squeal and laugh. Now, so if you know anybody that's well over 100 that lives in Gresley, that used to go to York Road School, ask them if they heard the ghost noises in there. That's it.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely, and I really appreciate you coming over and telling us that. How long were your grandparents here for?
From the early 1920s up until right the end of 1930.
Oh, a long time then.
Yeah, my mum was courting my dad by the time they left.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh.
And my dad
Nice.
used to come up here on a motorbike and
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Thank
She
you.
got an uncle that was a vicar, and it was one winter. My dad had come round a corner on his motorbike to come here, and skidded and nearly knocked this vicar over. And the vicar grumbled at him, and my dad gave him some choice language back. And my dad got sidetracked and just called to see a friend first before then. And meanwhile, the vicar walks up here and comes in because it's my mum and my aunt's Christmas party going on. And my dad walks in, parks his motorbike, gets here finally, parks his motorbike, walks in, and there's the vicar. Face to face with the vicar.